Madlanga Judicial Commission of Inquiry. ATM parliamentary leader is Vuyo Zungula, who joins us now for his party's reaction. Mr. Zungula, good evening to you. Thank you very much for your time. A very interesting quote from the Democratic Alliance there, that every commission is as good as its recommendations. You may have started off as having a problem with the establishment of the inquiry itself. I suppose that's water under the bridge now. The Commission of Inquiry is here. What are your expectations?
Maybe I would go further from that quote to actually speak about the implementation of the recommendations. Because if the recommendations are there, no matter how good they may be, if they are not implemented by whoever that needs to implement them, whatever institution, whether it's parliament, it's the executive, those recommendations, they count for nothing. We've seen in the past how commissions sit, they spend a lot of money, but that does not really translate into tangible actions, because people do not want recommendations that are just on paper but they are not implemented. They want recommendations that will be implemented to improve state institutions, to improve legislation, and to somewhat correct the wrongs that might have prompted the creation or the establishment of particular commissions of inquiries.
Yeah. Something interesting came out at the weekend, Mr. Zungula, specifically around these commissions of inquiry. And this was something that is of a personal nature, I suppose, which makes us sometimes wake up to these things as we watch them on TV. Justice Zondo, who presided over the Zondo Commission of Inquiry, quoted in the Sunday Times as saying he was pained having to swear in people who were implicated in the very Commission of Inquiry that he led. And we often overlook these things as if these are not human beings. They're not really alive to what they are doing and they are exposed to. What do you make of that comment at the weekend from Justice Zondo, that he was pained having to swear in people who were implicated in wrongdoing at the commission that he ran? Because it talks to, in part, to what we are going to see and experience here now, people implicated in this, but may still be serving in the police service.
Indeed. I think it speaks to what I alluded to earlier, whereby there's going to be a commission, millions of, if not billions, will be spent. After that, the state spends a lot of money on these commissions. There's going to be recommendations on paper. They may look good on paper. They may address some of the issues that are concerning us as citizens. But if the powers that be do not execute what is in the recommendations, then all of those commissions, it is as good as wasteful expenditure. And the root cause of that is that we've got a culture in our executive or political leadership in the country whereby they ignore recommendations that do not suit their political desires or interests. And that is why even on the deliberations on the State Capture Commission, immediately in our country, you say state capture. Even if you're not, you don't even mention one name. In people's minds, they think of certain people who those people, in their view, are the ones who are guilty of state capture. But the other people, equally as implicated in terms of the report, because there's no action taken against them, then, those people are not going to be scrutinized like other people. Yeah. So the selective application of the law, the selective application in terms of the recommendations from these commissions, it's what is making people to have the fatigue. People do not have fatigue on commissions of inquiries per se, but it is a fact that millions are spent, but the recommendations remain recommendations. They're not getting implemented. Or when they're implemented, it is to suit the interests of whoever that is presiding. So that is what is problematic in the manner in which the country is dealing with the issue of recommendations which are not binding. Because if they were binding, it would mean that each and every person that is implicated, they are going to be held accountable. But if they are not binding, then also these commissions of inquiries, then they remain a political tool which some political leaders use as a political weapon to fight other people and to protect the people who are in their camp or in their faction, as we see in the State Capture Commission.
I'd like to end the conversation on the very last point that you raised, that these commissions sometimes are used as tools to fight political battles, but mine is slightly different. I think it was SAFTU, the Trade Union Federation, which said at the very announcement of this commission, and they said this should not be used to lull South Africans into some kind of slumber. Basically that people's expectations are very high right now. Everyone's tentacles are up, and we want to hear exactly what is going on in the police, the judiciary, and the criminal networks. Who is linked to who? But once the commission comes and people give evidence, the attention span sort of dissipates, and we all go into our corners and say, well, maybe we expected a lot, and we should have known that we would come to this point. I guess my question is, how do we keep the interest just as high? I remember not too long ago, there were people who were marching in support of Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. How do you keep that energy? How do you keep that attention span still, even at the end of the process?
I think, Polly, for the purposes of the functioning of state institutions, regardless whether there is the interest from citizens or maybe they've moved on to another issue, you know how our country is. There's always a new issue that is coming up that might take the attention of South African citizens. However, I think citizens must have the trust that the institutions will work regardless whether citizens are paying attention or they are interested in something else, but the institutions must do their work and deliver in accordance to their mandate, especially for this particular commission, because it is a well-known fact, it is a reality that we know that our country is infiltrated in terms of our justice system, in terms of our crime fighting institutions by criminal syndicates. I'll make an example about illegal mining. We know it is a reality. We speak about it every day. As we are talking now, probably, there are illegal miners that are mining. And guess what? The government, there's no way the government does not know about such operations. We've got a problem of illicit trade, regardless whether it is tobacco, it is alcohol, it is the goods that are sold in the spazas, and even then, it is the state in terms of the police is involved in terms of them allowing such operations to happen. Even in the drug space, we know that there was an instance whereby a shipment of cocaine was stolen from Hawks, from a Hawks warehouse, and again, life continued as per normal. So that is the reality. Now, I think what the citizens are looking for is that over and above the outrage, because citizens are right to be outraged, but they do not have the power to arrest people. They do not have the power to actually enable laws or enact laws that will deal with the systematic issues. Theirs would be outrage on one thing or the other. But the institutions themselves, whether it is parliament or it is the executive or it is the judiciary, must do what they are mandated by in terms of the law, in order to make sure that whether there is outrage or there's no outrage, there is interest or no interest, but if there's any form of wrongdoing in the country, we must trust our institutions to work, because that is why there are governments that are formed and there are laws that regulate the conduct of people, the conduct of those who are in power. But in the absence of the people or the institutions doing what they are mandated to do, then you are going to see people marching. And from a march, Koli, whereby people are taking to the streets marching, something else can come. We can have areas whereby people will want to govern themselves because they've lost faith in terms of the government, because the interest, in fact, the trust people have on the government is premised on the government fulfilling what is in the law.
Yeah.
Now, if the government does not fulfill what is in the law, then people are going to govern themselves, and there are going to be no-go areas for the police, because even now, currently, we know there are areas whereby police SEPS members who are attached to some police stations, they're in the pockets of drug dealers. And in those communities, you can't expect the people to have any form of confidence and trust in such police members because they are acting outside of the law. So we're hoping that this commission does its part in terms of the recommendations, and the powers that be act on those recommendations in order to restore the trust in government. Because if this commission has the recommendations and and those recommendations are not implemented, then you are going to see trust that is dwindling on the judiciary, on the executive, and in parliament, and in the entire government of our country. And that will not bode well for the future of our country.
Vuyo Zungula, ATM leader in Parliament, thank you very much for your time and talking to us on the back of a media briefing addressed by the chair of the Commission of Inquiry into South Africa's criminal justice system.